Welcome to Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. This is Level 2, Lesson 6, all about the sun, its connection to DNA, light, and interdimensional ethics. So in previous lessons, I have been speaking a lot about the sun and its connection to consciousness. Its emanations are timelines, and its connection to unconditional love and our creation of the moment. And I often use this image down here because it is a very scientific and very accurate image that I took from a video that is about the interplay between the Earth's magnetic field and the sun and the emanations that come from the sun. So we've been talking a lot about, on the non-physical realm, the magnetic fields that interact between the Earth and the sun, and also between yourself as an individual and planet Earth and the connection to the sun, and how all three of those things have at their core a singularity. So just to reiterate, you have a singularity at your core, the planet has a singularity at its core, and the sun has a singularity at its core. And these are three different doorways that all lead to the same infinity. Well, in this lesson, I want to talk a little bit more about the connection of the sun and the sun's emanations and the sun's light to your DNA, to what is happening inside of your cellular structure on a microscopic scale, and how that is affecting the overall magnetic field of your body and the overall magnetic field of the planet. So one of the first things is, this is hearkening back to level 1 lessons, but basically the idea that your DNA is not a static thing. It is actually a moving, dancing, constantly shifting, twisting, and morphing thing. And this, what I have right here, is an illustration that comes from a scientific paper all about DNA and some of the shapes that DNA makes when it is the process of coiling and uncoiling. So hold on one sec. I will attach in the email a video about supercoiling. This is basically the way that DNA is knitted together and structured from a very small little strand right here. That would be analogous to one thread or one piece of yarn, and how it is wrapped around these protein cells called histones, and how if you wrap them around those histones enough, and here's another still frame that I took from a video that is an excellent animation of what a DNA looks like in real time as it's doing this dance. So it's wrapped around these histones. That's one of them right there, and that's each one of these light blue little spools that the thread is wrapped around, and it begins to create these torus shapes. You can see right here that each one of these begins to be a stacked up torus, and it's called, at this stage of wrapping, a solenoid. Again, we're going back to some of the teachings from level 1 in order to refresh your mind, but basically that as the DNA is wrapped tighter and tighter and tighter, this is what is called supercoiling. And just like if you have ever wrapped up anything, a rubber band, a piece of string, a piece of yarn, the more that you wrap it up, the more energy it has stored within it. So when your DNA is at the level of being a chromosome, like this right here, and it's inside of your cell in the nucleus, like here's your cell, here's the nucleus, and here's the X-shaped chromosome right there. In order for it to be read by your RNA, and that's what's going on in this picture over here, what you have is this green structure that is RNA is attempting to read what is going on in this area right here. This is the DNA. And so in order to read those pages of the book, quote unquote, of your DNA, the pages have to be opened up. They can't be tightly coiled. Well, going back to the analogy of the spring that is tightly coiled, or a slinky or any kind of thing like that, when you try to uncoil one part, the other part coils up even tighter. And that is the challenge that DNA has when it is trying to access certain pages of the book, like I'm trying to access a page that is in there, but in order to uncoil some parts of it and open them up like this, it would mean that the rest of the DNA has to be coiled up overly tightly. So the DNA is incredibly smart. It's incredibly intelligently designed, and the way that it manifests is such an orderly manifestation that it is quite beautiful. What it does is it snips or it cuts the DNA in different places. So over here in this diagram, you can see places where there is a break in the DNA, and you can even see a weaving of this one going over the other one. Well, what happened was little enzymes came along and they snipped this spot right here and snipped this spot right here. They made a little break in the chain that relieved some of the tension that was achieved by this supercoiling and then uncoiling in order to access it. So basically, I am telling you that during this dance of your DNA, as your DNA is being opened up and uncoiled so that it can be read, some parts of it have to be cut or spliced or broken in order to break the tension. And these formations here are what have been scientifically observed as dance steps in the formation of your DNA as it is going through these various, we could call it coilings or uncoilings, but really it's changing shape. Your DNA, that is this one single strand over here, is actually changing shape all the time. It's not just a line. It's, look at this, woven into a circle or a wreath type of arrangement over here. And over here, if you look even more closely, you can see how some of these guys come out and then they go down and then they form a loop and then go around like this. That's what you're looking at. And here's another one that goes over the top and then around the back and then over the top. So what you're seeing is an incredibly complex interplay and interweaving of energy throughout your DNA. Your DNA is not a static object that just sits in the center of your cell and does nothing. Far from that. It is constantly furling, unfurling, coiling and uncoiling, and being cut and spliced into these new and interesting configurations. Look at this one down here. Here you have this chain is interacting with this chain. These are two different loops of DNA that are coming together and being woven together in that central loop area there. And you can see how there are areas that overlap and there are areas that go around the back. And all of this is in motion. All of this is in the process of coiling, uncoiling, and spinning. Your DNA is always spinning at a very high rate. So what I have just described to you is the basic observed or scientific truth that your DNA is vibrating. Your DNA is always dancing, oscillating, vibrating, twisting, and forming different shapes. Okay, so now we're getting into some very fun and wonderful stuff about your DNA and what your DNA really is. Because far from being just a mere expressor of the blueprints of your physical proteins, your DNA is not just the recipe that gives you the shape of your nose or the color of your eyes. It is far, far more than that. It is intimately connected to the sun, because your DNA is an antenna for consciousness. Really, when you think about this dancing, twisting, vibrating, morphing structure, what you have is a vibrating string or a vibrating crystal. And it not only is a receiver that is affected by waves, it also can affect others in that it is vibrating and affecting others. So, okay, this is an important concept. I'm going to go over it again. That your DNA is analogous to a vibrating crystal. That your DNA is affected by vibrations and emanations, specifically light and the consciousness solar emanations that come from the sun and the stars, and also that your DNA as an antenna is also a broadcaster, and that you are constantly emanating vibrations by the patterns that your DNA are dancing and weaving and twisting and morphing themselves in, and that you are therefore affecting others that are also bearers of DNA. This is why this lesson will also contain some ideas about interdimensional ethics and responsibility and unconditional love. Because when we raise our energy to the level of unconditional love, we begin to recognize that there is not a need for action and acting upon others, making other people do things, like sitting down and saying, I'm going to make you do this, or I, consciously say you need to do this. What you begin to see is that just the act of you emanating unconditional love, this very particular tone, has an impact on everyone around you. It has an impact on all of the living beings around you, and living beings that includes not only, planetary structure, but non-planetary living beings. That when you are emanating love, you are having an impact on consciousness at large. And of course, the same goes true for others. When others are emanating anything, it certainly comes to you and has an impact on you. So we get into the question of interdimensional ethics because we live in a world of free will. We live in a world where truly you cannot impose your will upon someone else, and that is the real realization of unconditional love. When you look at someone else's life in judgment and you say, they're living their life wrong, they should be doing blah, 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 and blah, and then they would be perfect, just like me. What you're really saying is, that person, I want to make them do this, or think this, or believe this, or act like this. And what you realize when you reach the state of unconditional love, you have the perspective to say, they really need to do that on their own. They really need to make those choices and come to that decision to act and behave in that way on their own. And that's why they're experiencing their journey through life. That's why they're experiencing the feedback of their particular, loop with the universe, where they are sending out their light, their, emanations, and then experiencing it reflecting back as their life emanations. You cannot make someone else do anything. And each person is setting up their own ideal circumstances for their own growth and learning. So most of unconditional love is the realization that, wow, not much is necessary. Hands off. Allow each person to unfold it as their own particular artistic plan. But you also understand that it is very appropriate to have boundaries. So you can say, yes, you're here to learn your life lessons and everything like that, but you can't learn them all over me. So that is how we, protect ourselves from people who are of a lower vibrational nature, because they might still be engaged in things like violence or exploitation. And you do not want them to try to impose that upon you, because that is taking away your free will and your choice to not be enslaved, or not be raped, or not be beheaded, or not be violenced in any way. So what I'm trying to say here is that we are, little infants or toddlers of consciousness, and we're beginning to learn interdimensional ethics. When you begin connectivity, you recognize that you're connected to the world. What you're sending out is affecting other people, and what they're sending out is affecting you. This is very much like the early days of the internet. All of a sudden, people recognize that their computers are connected to a much larger network, and that you have to have firewalls, and you have to have security, and you have to limit things with passwords so that you are limiting what you are broadcasting and sharing with others. And of course, you are limiting in a sensible way what you are receiving from the outside world. Well, this is the very same thing. As humanity begins to become more telepathically awakened and acts more with this higher faculty of inner eyesight being open and awakened, it is like having connectivity, and you have to be very cautious about the entities and the mentalities that you are contacting, once you begin, it's like anything. You are texting or communicating with entities. You have to say, who am I talking with, and what is the type of interaction that I'm wishing to have? So this has everything to do with your daily, day-to-day experience, interpersonally on Earth between humans. That if we could say, this is one person over here and this is another person over here, and they both exist on Earth, this person's DNA might be vibrating and dancing in a very different way than this person over here. Like, this person might be me. I might be dancing my DNA in the form of a flying rainbow lasagna. And you're students of this course, and so you've watched previous lessons all about that. You understand what I'm talking about. And this person over here might still be dancing with their DNA in some very ancient dance steps, some very ancient patterns that involve a flattening out of the DNA. Like, when you look at this, first of all, you understand now that you can see that this is a wreath and it's interwoven. There's different strands that go up and down and all around. It's complex. It's three-dimensional understanding of DNA. This is way beyond what science has understood up to this point, where the way that science studied DNA was by essentially unraveling the whole sweater so that all you have is one big long thread, and not looking at the places where the sweater would have overlapped when it was all woven together, that those places where the threads cross and uncross and overlap and weave around each other are very special places where energy is shared, and you could say that different combinations arise from those intersections, from those places where it is cut and spliced and put together. It's a place where new ideas are formed, and there is an interaction and an interplay of one strand of DNA to the other strand of DNA. So science is only just starting to understand the connectivity, basically the proximity. When you have the sweater all woven together, the sweater of your DNA is all woven together, right? And then when you look at the areas where everything crosses over, you might see that what was considered to be a junk, quote-unquote, DNA, or something that is not essential to the pattern, all of a sudden you see, oh, those are all of those switches that turn things on and off, or those are all of those things that exacerbate or antagonize or agonize a particular trait. So this is, making a bridge here in this lesson between conventional understanding and social understanding, and also what is happening on a spiritual level, because this has everything to do with, you are entitled to make your own choices in your life. Your belief system and what you choose to, the rate at which you choose to vibrate, and the emanations that you choose to emanate, these are your choice. And you also get to choose who you surround yourself with. You don't have to surround yourself with people if you find that they are, sending a lot of negative vibrations your way. You certainly can choose to surround yourself with people who reflect back to you the positive vibrations that you send out. And what I mean is, unconditional love and above. So that would mean, essentially, we create communities where we magnetically attract to ourselves the beings that are vibrating at a complementary rate. So if you are a peaceful person and you're interested in cooperation and you're interested in treating others in the way that you would like to be treated, you will surround yourself, you send that vibration. This is basic law of attraction stuff. And of course, others who are vibrating at the same rate sense that, and they come and they vibrate near you. And the people who aren't vibrating at a like rate tend to separate out and go to a different place where they are more comfortable and where they won't be challenged by a vibration that is of unconditional love. Because it can be challenging to someone who is at a lower vibrational rate to be around people who are vibrating at an unconditional love rate, because it can sometimes bring up all of their issues. It can percolate up or dislodge all of those blockages in much the same way that a sonic jewelry cleaner cleans your ring. Like if this is, your ring with your diamond on top of it, and you put it inside of this sonic jewelry cleaner, you put it inside, there's like a fluid in there, and the fluid starts to vibrate, and what the vibration does, it vibrates off any little specks or particles that might be stuck on your ring. Well, that's exactly what happens when you're in the presence of people who are creating that tone of unconditional love. And it can be people who are living their life in a secular way, or it can be people who are living, in a monastic setting or something like that. But that basically when people are living at a high vibration, they might make people of a lower vibration feel uncomfortable because they are causing all of that person's impurities and vibrations to be brought up so that they can be purged and sent away. Because now, in the last block of time for this particular segment, I'm talking about the interconnectivity, the planetary consciousness, the shift that is going on, and my portion of my contribution to that shift, which is all about the flying rainbow lasagna. So this is this painting that I created, and it is actually a study for a much larger painting. This painting here is called The Birth of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and I created it in the summer of 2012, which was a crucial bridge, a crucial time of human history leading up to the singularity experienced on December 21st of 2012. And this is a detail of a larger painting that I will share with you at some point that's called Birth of a New Dimension. And basically this depicts Earth against the solar disk, showing the interplay between the two energetically. And it shows out of the toroidal energy field, which I don't know if you can see it in this picture, but in the painting, there are tons and tons and tons of little red dots that go around like this, and you can see them as the donut-shaped energy field, which is Earth's magnetosphere, is being twisted and morphed into the flying rainbow lasagna shape, which is the new dance step that I invented and that I have come here to share with the rest of everyone who has DNA. That essentially the flying rainbow lasagna is a way to add a higher dimension to this process of twisting and folding and splicing and resplicing and interweaving one's DNA, that you can apply this to achieve even more and greater diverse combinations of your DNA. That's the whole point, is that, let's say, if your DNA is the alphabet and it's set up in a particular way and there's a limited way in which you can put together these letters to say something and to say words, and we can say, okay, and this is what, the limit of what we can say with it. But if we can add another dimension, we can twist and splice and rearrange the letters of the alphabet into whole new configurations. And this new configuration is essentially this, the flying rainbow lasagna. It allows for new combinations to be made. So once the flying rainbow lasagna was invented in 2001, all of a sudden there opened up a whole new range of genetic dance steps that could be performed by humanity in this time and place. And that meant that humanity and all of the DNA-bearing species that are on Earth right now and throughout the galaxy would no longer be limited in the way that they had in the past. This is the amazing news about the flying rainbow lasagna. Since 2001, essentially, the shackles that limited and bound humanity and other DNA-bearing species have been removed. But like anything, it is a question of learning how to use the tool or learning how to use the instrument and perfecting it. So, it's like saying the violin was invented, however, we are still mastering the technique of playing it and creating music with it. Well, the flying rainbow lasagna was created, and I have been, embodying it since 2001, and I have also been learning more and more about its significance and its secrets, or let's say mysteries that have yet to be revealed, because this shape, this flying rainbow lasagna shape, I understand a good deal of it, and I understand enough to know that there's even more. There are even more and more layers of understanding and significance that I will be able to achieve when I achieve even greater perspectives. So I bring this up because, I am one little cell here on the surface of this planet Earth. And I'm one little cell, and I have my DNA, inside of my nuclei of my cells, and they are dancing like a flying rainbow lasagna. And that is having an impact on all of the other beings that exist here on this planet and in other places because DNA is an antenna. And so now you have to understand, I'm making all these little tiny red dots because these are all little tiny DNA. DNA is an antenna that allows us to tune into a particular reality. It is the bridge between the world of matter and the world of pure light. It's the bridge of consciousness between the fifth dimensional possibilities, the world of uncollapsed waveforms, and the actual timelines that you can experience that are in a time cone that you can actually be experiencing. The bridge between consciousness and light and time and a third dimensional experience is all within DNA. That this is much, much more than just the blueprint for your physical body. This is the structure of reality. It's the blueprint for what you will be experiencing on a moment-by-moment and day-to-day experience. So part of what you're experiencing, of course, is the health and structure and cellular functioning of your body. But much of what you experience is external events and conversations and interactions with, beings external to yourself. And I'm telling you right now that that is also emanating from your DNA. And so now you have to understand that your thoughts and your emotions and your everything, you're emanating and you're affecting everyone else. I will tell you very briefly about an experiment that was done by placing DNA in a test tube with distilled water and swirling it around and then taking that DNA out. And it showed that there was evidence that that water had at one point had DNA in it. But the amazing thing about this experiment was that the control test tube that was kept with no DNA in it and just plain distilled water was also shown to have DNA traces in it. So what that means is that the DNA in the first test tube was vibrating, and those vibrations affected the distilled water over here across the room in this DNA. And that was a pretty amazing thing for science to recognize, something that shamans and spiritual-minded people might have known for quite a long time. But again, we're creating mental integument and tying together many of these different thought structures, and there's a value to doing this. So your emanations on a cellular level, down here on a cellular level, bringing forth the DNA that is within each one of these little nuclei here, that is affecting everyone else. And so the dance steps that I am performing as a flying rainbow lasagna, even if I were not to pick up a microphone or a pen or any form of communication and actually make drawings or recordings about the lasagna, I would be affecting all of these other people because I am emanating flying rainbow lasagna waves. And it is not an imposition. These are the interdimensional ethics now questions. Am I imposing my vibration upon others? No, I am not. It is not any different than anyone else who is here. Any one of these little dots here is thinking their own thoughts and dancing with their DNA, their own dance steps, largely ancestrally dictated dance steps. And it is each person's choice which dance steps they choose to do. However, it is fair to say that these emanations are all interplay. It is all one emanation affecting the other emanation. And we must take responsibility and say, I am sending this out. I know that I am affecting others. It is my intent to affect them positively. And also I recognize that it is each person's choice how they choose to dance with their DNA. So it is not something that is imposed upon someone else, but it is like a thought, like any of the thoughts that we experience, that is offered on the tray of the universe, like on the beautiful smorgasbord of the universe. Would you like to dance like this, or like this, or like this? Would you like to think like this, or like this, or like this? And it is, of course, up to each individual to choose how you are dancing. So this is the end to part 1. We will continue with these ideas in part 2. Thank you very much.